are listening to Saladin Kunaya Allah. This is Asia Talk Radio.
Peace and welcome to Atlantis Build Talk Radio, the premier station for 5% of Nation of Gods and Earth social commentary, interviews, musicology, and uncensored discussions about the science of everything in life. This station is a subsidiary of Asia and the Atlantis School for Gifted Youngsters at www.atlantischool.blogspot.com and Asia TV at YouTube/Quanaya, QUANAAH.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to sit down with you, talk about your first and new book release.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you for everything.
Yeah, man. So before we talk about that, I wanted to kind of go into your background, in terms of just being like a cinematographer, some of the independent films that you've been making, in particularly Attack of the Killer Shrews. I've learned that you did a double feature recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had a double feature. Yeah, it was at the Transit Drive-In. Attack of the Killer Shrews played with Wolf House, which is another film that I made. I mean, that's kind of what I'm known for mostly, is being a filmmaker, a low budget guy that could get stuff done on a shoestring budget. I mean, I worked in the film industry for a number of years as a hired gun for bigger studios, but I'm an independent person, so I just need to be independent.
Yeah. So, I mean, thinking about that, I mean, you have a pretty big following in terms of you being a cinematographer and working in that industry. Now, I'm sure most people probably would have expected you to publish a book related to that particular film, but you published a book, Secret Teachings of the Hidden Masters. Why that book in comparison to what you actually could have written about?
I mean, I kept the Secret Teachings of the Hidden Masters under wraps until we released it a couple weeks ago. It's a part of my life that up until now has been completely private. I'm a student of the Secret Teachings of the Vajrayana Buddhism sect of Tibetan Buddhism. So my public persona is a indie artist / activist, artivist, especially a filmmaker. And there's a lot of books out there about independent filmmaking. I do plan on writing one at some point, just tips and tricks and stuff. But this book I've been working on for at least 10 years. So it's more important, I think, in terms of the shift that we're going through as a collective consciousness in society. And I see, you got to know a little bit about my background to know, where I was at and in terms of what I wanted to do in a literature, sense. Like my first emergence as an author. Vajrayana Buddhism in itself is said to be the only school of any teaching or philosophy that you can achieve enlightenment, whatever that is, in one lifetime. So it's known as the diamond method. And it found me, and then my life just like flipped upside down, and I started being able to understand things that I previously wasn't able to understand, and that's the secret teachings. So then I learned that there's a whole school within the school of just the secret teachings. And I was like, wow, I mean, I didn't even know I was studying this whole time,
Yeah, at what point would you say was that significant moment when you came into that realization?
Definitely the summer of 2012. So I knew what I believed in, you know what I mean? Like, I had my own theories about the world and science and consciousness and Jesus and Buddha and you know what I mean? I'd never heard anybody express their theories quite like mine were. And then when I was a part of an initiation, a shamanic initiation, which I didn't sign up for. It just, sort of happened in my life the way they do. That's when Vajrayana found me. And that is when I realized that I had always been on this path. I just didn't know it.
Now, in terms of working in the film industry, were there certain moments that were points that gave you a sense of like an aha moment that runs parallel to your private life?
There was, yeah. I mean, for a while my goal was to become a director in like a broad sense that, you go to the movies and watch movies that I'm pumping out, like Hollywood style. But there was a couple of films that I worked on that made me really sick and turned me away from the film industry. I mean, like everything just came crashing down on certain films where I was like, this is not the creative outlet that I thought it was, So I built on my company, White Lion Studios, with my team in my hometown, Niagara Falls, and it gives me satisfaction while being able to give something back to the community.
Now, in terms of just your demographic as an artivist, as a cinematographer, how have you been received in terms of now expressing some of your private life with the release of The Secret Teachings of the Hidden Masters?
It's definitely something that people don't understand yet. Some people who are into things like theosophy and Eastern mysticism and who know more about the subject matter have approached me and said, wow, I didn't even know that like you're out doing these goofball comedies, and this is deep, and how did the two go together, just like what you just asked. But my demographic, I'd say probably 90% of them are still like, oh, it's cool that you wrote a book. I don't think, because they haven't read it yet, I don't think that they have grasped that, what I've shown them was totally just somebody that, is me, but it's like one hat that I wear, as a filmmaker and as a controversial, community activist.
So how have you begun to cope with that?
Oh, it's great. I mean, I feel like I have been, like, it's probably how, like, someone who's gay feels when they're coming out of the closet. You know what I mean? Like, they've been, like, suppressing their true individuality for such a long time. And obviously, I know people like yourself, and, we're able to build on things that most people don't even, can't even hear it. So, it's been nice to have people surrounding me in my inner circle who I can trust and be myself. But now that the book is out, I mean, like, a lot of people are asking me, well, what about like this teaching? What about, this prophet? And I'm like, just read the book. That's why I wrote the book. So it's nice to just be able to point to something and be like, you just got to get the book. It's a reference book.
Yeah. One thing that I would say is it's one of the best books that I've read that shows the common thread in a lot of teachings in various different places around the world, different geographic locations, different eras or time frames, and it's not often that you have someone that is able to do that in a very comprehensive way,
I study, like right here, there's like this one, The Golden Thread of Oneness. You know what I mean? Like, that's a book, it's thin and it's, it's small, but that touches mainly on Christianity. And then I have like my indigenous books, I have my scientific books, I mean, like everything that I read right here, I borrowed from, as a source, because like, the Europeans were living like this, and at the exact same time, You know, I wanted to see like what's going on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
You know, so it's fascinating that you get this clear illustration of mankind in a deeper sense. You know, I mean, like there's a book up here somewhere. Oh, here it is. Lies My Teacher Told Me. I haven't read that yet. Okay, I mean, I haven't even gotten into it.
Yeah.
But I understand why that was written.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that's actually a pretty popular book these days. So that shows where our consciousness is going.
True indeed. Now, what would you say are 3 goals that you have for the release of the Secret Teachings of the Hidden Masters?
One was just completed today, thanks to yourself, and it was included in the British Library. So that's a preservation of this knowledge. And so that was actually number 1 on my list.
Okay.
I wanted it to be archived. So I mean that was fast. It just goes to show you that, you know,
Absolutely.
it was the right timing. So I would say number 2 is that it finds initiates of the secret teachings, whether they be Buddhist, Christian, Jewish, 5%ers, whether they be, you know, white, black, red, yellow, doesn't matter, you know, to get this in their hands and be able to cross-reference it with, you know, their personal philosophy or religion, and then to use it as like a translation, as a personal translator, for people of other races and cultures and languages. So it's kind of like the Rosetta Stone, you know, or something along those lines that I think people will be able to draw the parallels from it. So that's definitely a big goal of it. And then I think the third thing is I just want to keep writing.
Yeah.
You know, so
Absolutely.
I'm already working on the second one because I got a whole stack of composition notebooks that I've been keeping notes for 10 years on this. I couldn't fit it all in there, you know. So I definitely want to just keep it going and create a series of it and use that, especially with younger generations, to educate them on what's, you know, what's actually true in society and what's been covered up.
Yeah. So what would you say has been the biggest challenge just in the process of the publishing of that book?
Honestly, the biggest challenge for me was, what do I put in it of my personal life, my private life, and what do I leave out? Because I drew from some personal experiences in order to best illustrate the teaching, you know, that it coincides with. But the book's not about me, you know, and I didn't want it to be about me. And then there's things that people will never understand that are entirely private, that like visions and, you know, experiences with the higher power and stuff like that. And traditionally, you're not really supposed to give those things away anyway. They're just for you. So it was hard for me to put the book in a comprehensive form because it's not really a narration through and through. But that came in the stream of consciousness. You know, I mean, there was a couple of days where I just wrote 100 pages in 2 days, and it just came out of me. You know, so it just worked itself out. You know, but I was stuck on that fact for years.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. Like, so what's been some of the responses that you've gotten so far?
So today, a guy who is a loyal fan of my movies, and that's how I know him, told me that he finished my book, and he said that right after he bought a copy, he got really sick, and that the book played no small part in his recovery. He said that he was having bad dreams and those went away, and it just uplifted him, and it created all kinds of questions and, you know, connections and stuff in his mind that, you know, he said that he was a big fan of Joseph Campbell, you know, and I think I referenced him a few times in there. So, I mean, you know, it's just, people are starting to feel the connection when they read it. You know what I mean? And like my wife read it to proofread it, so she wasn't reading it just, you know, straight on through for enjoyment. But there were some parts about it that we had to discuss when she was done, and I was explaining to her like coded language and ciphers, and you know, why some words have a capitalized letter at the beginning of, you know, like, I mean, it was the kind of thing where, like, I've been waiting to have that conversation with her for years. I just don't want to throw a book in her face and be like, see, this is, you know what I mean? I don't want to lecture her on it, you know? So it was the right time.
Yeah. At the same time, I'm sure people may approach her, you know, as an ambassador of that work, you know, being your wife and everything.
Of course, they already have. You know, I know that one individual in particular had said that the medicine wheel was wrong, and that the white belongs on top because it represents the north, which is very common. But you know, you could just do that. You know what I mean? Yeah, so she had talked to him when I wasn't there, and she said, "Well, you know, I'll tell him that you said that, you know." Yeah. But if I was there, I would have just been like, "Well, there you go." Now, when I discussed the medicine wheel in the book, that's not even the medicine wheel that I discussed, because I discussed black elks, which is entirely different. The way that it was shown to him in a vision. So the colors and their positioning in the north, south, east, and west, it's like debatable. You know what I mean? It's up for interpretation. Some nations don't even use black. You know, they'll use purple or blue. You know what I mean? So I just thought that was funny because, like, she didn't really know what to say. You know? It's that kind of thing though that I'm trying to break. Like, you know, that guy didn't read the book. He didn't get a copy of it. You know what I mean? And if he did, he would have seen on one of the pages that I said that the colors were highly debated.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely.
He didn't even get past the cover.
Yeah. And I think, you know, just that cognitive dissonance that's created sometimes.
Huge.
With people when they're confronted with ideas and concepts that are the antithesis of maybe their belief system or just their worldview. You know, that's usually oftentimes a response to some people. You know?
And that's like what I just the native medicine man that I was just referencing, Black Elk. He was a Heoka, which is Lakota way of saying a sacred clown, which is in Native American culture and many different tribes, they have a sacred clown that's held just as high as a medicine person. The idea is to create that cognitive dissonance so that you get people starting to question their entire paradigm. You know, like I know that you had said that some of the pre-K kids that you work with had pointed to, like, you know, different rivers, like major rivers, and like, well, how can they be flowing upwards, you know? And it's like, well, if you look at the planet from space, how do you know which way is up? You know what I mean? So like that kind of way of thinking, I mean, like turning reality on its head and then making it into something that is plastic, you know, that can be shaped.
Yeah, and that's scary for some people. You know what I mean?
Indeed.
Because, you know, they're not just simply questioning what they believe or their worldview, but their entire sense of reality, their sense of safety, maybe their career.
Well, that's the time that we live in right now. I mean, you know, people right now, you have millions of people who are burning Nikes because Colin Kaepernick got put in an ad, you know, and it's doing all kinds of crazy stuff to people's thoughts because, you know, they had loyalty to a brand and now they hate that brand because of who they chose as a spokesperson, and they hate that spokesperson because of a simple action that he's doing. You know what I mean? Those types of people aren't ready for, you know, the bare naked truth. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the emperor's new clothes. You know, they're not ready to be told that they're butt naked. You know, because it'll ruin everything that they thought that they were. You know, their ego would be shot down, and so they're pure ego, and they're protecting their ego in a sense. You know, but there comes a time when we're not able to live like that anymore.
Yeah, it's making me think about the 85%, you know, them being deaf and dumb. And, you know, in a sense, you know, these being secret teachings just simply mean that they're hermetic, they're just tightly sealed because a person is blind, deaf, and dumb. They're not at a place in their growth and development where they're even able to receive things that's just right in front of them, you know?
That's exactly why they're called secret teachings, because, you know, you can read them, but if you can't understand them, then they're invisible to you, you know, they're non-existent in your reality. So same thing with the hidden masters. The hidden masters aren't actually, you don't gotta go seek them on a mountaintop. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And they can be found within anybody. It's just that 85% is just gray matter, you know? And you could put electricity through it and activate it, you know what I mean? But it's the difference between driving a car that has a CD player and driving a car that doesn't have one installed. You know what I'm saying?
No, so what would you say would be a good starting point, just for a person basically to start opening up their eyes and just being a little bit more conscious and aware? What's some of the things that they can do?
Well, everything that I teach on this subject is always going to be from a Buddhist point of view. Okay. And anybody can study Zen. You know, Zen is the art of just being. You know, so everybody's a human being. So all they have to do is strip away all their thoughts, and it sounds like, you know, a lot of work. Like how can I just focus my mind on one point? And you could do that right now. You could look at like a doorknob and just you know, focus. That's called shamatha. So shamatha is a technique of meditation where you just breathe, just focus on your breath, and that's it. You don't have to do anything beyond that. And the method to the technique is emptiness, and understanding that breath will happen even if you're not thinking about it. Even if you're not thinking about breathing, you're still breathing. So that's a bridge between our voluntary and our involuntary body and mind. Just like right now your heart's beating, but you don't have to think about it to do it. So our breath, the breath of life, is a bridge in between free will and a higher power. You know, so it's a very basic understanding that, like, you get like a 4-year-old kid and they get that. You know what I mean? But you get like a 45-year-old man that is more worried about like paying his bills, and he's got to wake up in the morning. And, you know what I mean?
One of the things that I learned is, in terms of focusing on one particular point, people do that every day, but it's really a question of what you are focusing on. You know, I've seen people who are drug addicts and they may focus on getting that next hit all day long. Or you may have the person that they play numbers or they do scratch off tickets or something. They're focused on that, you know? And people have oftentimes actual tools, but it's a question where they're directing those tools and that energy in terms of just how they're living their life.
Whatever you're focusing on is what you're associating as yourself. So if you put your focus on women, you're associating yourself with women. If you're a man, that has all kinds of meanings to it. You know, like if your focus is on women as a man and you're looking at them in admiration, then you're looking at them as like a Casanova almost. You know, so you're looking at them as they want to be with me. You know, so you're like a predator at that point. If your focus is entirely on success, being the best all the time, well, that's a whole nother level of ego where you know, you think that you need to put yourself on a pedestal, and that, I mean, society has so many different layers in our social constructs of, especially like America being considered a Christian nation, you know, and the church tells us you should try and be like Christ, but then at the same time they tell you nobody can be like Christ. You know what I mean? And it negates the original teaching altogether. So I mean, you know, we have to relearn and reprogram and re-educate people who are already set in their ways and think that everything's concrete. You know, even science knows that everything is not concrete. You know, we haven't even found a unifying theory, you know, for all the great powers in the universe. So the closest thing we have right now is the superstring theory, Michio Kaku. And the superstring theory is talked about in that book right there, Way of the Bushman. And they talk about the Kalahari tribe and the San, and their whole teaching. That book is translated from the elders. Their whole teaching is about the strings that connect mankind with animals, with plants, you know, in the web of life. And the Hopi, they talk about the spider woman that created the universe. And, you know, I mean, even like in Wicca and in paganism, they say that if you wish to live and thrive, keep the spider healthy and alive. Don't kill the spider, because the spider symbolizes weaving reality. You know, they create their net, which is a source of income for them, you know, a source of nutrients by catching food. It's also a home. So they're creating their whole world. And it's right there in them, you know, and like how beautiful are the designs that they make, you know. So all of these beliefs, these systems, are already in our mind, in our consciousness, and now science is just developing the tools to be able to understand them a little bit better.
In my journeys, I found that it's usually artists that have the ability to think more creatively and critically about reality, and having these type of builds, artists seem to be a little bit more receptive because they're already thinking in terms of outside of the box, whether they're performance artists, creative artists, any of those different forms of art. How have you been able to function in that industry and at the same time maintain that sense of perspective in terms of things that you've shared in that book, Secret Teachings of the Hidden Masters?
So just to build on what you just said, an artist will see like a blank white billboard on the side of the road, and they won't see a blank white billboard. They'll have the potential in mind, what that can become. And that is why art has the power to change everything. You know, if you look at us now, what you're wearing, you know, how you act, and the music you listen to and everything, all your influences, compared to what you would have been in 1962, you know, art is fashion, is music, is, you know what I mean? It changes our reality around us. And as art being an expression of the self or the soul, what we're seeing is the collective self and how it's advancing and evolving consciously. So I choose to evolve with it and to position myself in what is a natural position for me, and I find myself at the forefront of movements like the Niagara Renaissance movement and different ideologies, and that's when people like yourself come into my life, you know. And so basically it means having discipline, and that discipline is an understanding of responsibility. It's an understanding that my words have power, that as my platform grows, I have to grow with it. I can't go back. You know what I mean? Like I can't all of a sudden like become an alcoholic or something. You know what I mean? I mean, it's that kind of simplicity, but you know, I can't go backwards. So now, as things grow and advance in my life, I have to find ways to, like, it's like growing pains, you know what I mean? Like, I get taller, I need to find new clothes, you know? Like, I get more knowledge, I need to find ways to express that knowledge. So, filmmaking is obviously a huge platform, you know, it's visual. I mean, every art form is encompassed in film, you know, from drawing the storyboards and, you know, to writing the script, to the music and the soundtrack and, you know, the audio and lighting, everything, photography, everything is encompassed in film. With it having so many moving parts, it makes it like building a ship in a bottle, you know? So it's challenging. And as we challenge ourselves, that's how we grow. And it's almost superficial, you know? It's almost like taking steroids, like a dose of steroids. If I do a movie and the reaction to like a certain scene isn't what I wanted, you know, I'll be sitting in the theater with the crowd and maybe like I could feel them be like more quiet during the scene that I thought they would, you know, be excited. I make note of that. I also make note of any days that I have on set that are particularly difficult. And then what I do is I incorporate those into my next film and I focus on that. So I'll say, well, that scene that was hard to shoot, that's what we're leading with, because I gotta get it, you know, and the only way to get it is to do it again. You know what I mean? So I challenge myself, and as I challenge myself, I grow as an artist. As I grow as an artist, I grow as a person. You know, so I keep art at my central focus, even if, you know, it's sacred knowledge, teachings, because art is the power of the creator. You're creating.
Have you come in contact with other artists in the film industry who have a sense of the secret teachings of the hidden masters, whether they are just neophytes or they're apprentice just being exposed to it, or people who are kind of far along the path already?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, man, you would be pleasantly surprised at the caliber of filmmaker and actor, producer, writer that I have come into contact with who are more on the expert spectrum of understanding. So it's like, you know, I'm more conscious of watching the market and seeing when movies come out and like the so-called indie guy, you know, that's still working at like, you know, a $1 million budget, and what their message is and how that's combating the current narrative in society. And I'm watching it, knowing some of these people, you know, for years on a friend basis, you know, and they're working, you know, like there's work being done in Hollywood to change it. I mean, you look at like Harvey Weinstein going down, I knew Harvey Weinstein was doing that stuff for the last 10 years. That wasn't news. It was just people started talking about it, you know what I mean? So they took him down. You know, so as they keep eating each other and knocking people off the ivory tower, these indie guys are raising up, you know, and by and large, the like suits, you know, the executives of these big studios that are trying to maintain things as they are and not change with it, they have no idea that these producers and actors and artists are students of the secret teachings. But you look throughout history and you see that, you know what I mean? Like pretty much every great mind that had anything to do with alchemy or literature in a creative sense has at least come into contact with the secret teachings at some point in their life.
Would you count a person like Neil Gaiman as a part of that crowd who put out American Gods?
Yeah, I mean, so much so that he encoded everything in American Gods with the prophecies of the world. I mean, you got gods from Egypt, you got gods from, you know, ancient Greece, you know what I mean? So he knew what he was talking about, and to know what you're talking about down to that precision, yeah, he's got to be an initiate of the secret teachings. The thing is, you don't just come out and like tell the world, hey, I'm an initiate, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless you write a book about it. You got no choice.
Yeah. So are you saying that you're starting to see a shift in Hollywood and in just that industry as a whole?
Yeah, man. I mean, you know, the thing is, Hollywood manifests a dream that, you know, like they cast as a spell over the world. You know, and they make people think that the film industry is located in Hollywood. But the film industry is really this ambiguous thing. You know what I mean? Like people make like I do, making like $5,000 movies are a part of the film industry if they're competing at that level. My movies are sitting on a Walmart shelf right next to their movies. You know what I mean? So that's the film industry. But they want people to think that they own the film industry. So now that people are becoming more aware with like Netflix and film festivals and YouTube growing into something, and like everybody's got Snapchat and everything on their phone. You can shoot a whole movie on an iPhone. You know what I mean? They're losing their grip. And as they're doing that, I mean, if you ever read The Art of War, you know that, you wait for that moment, and when that moment is right, you strike. And I'm seeing it, man. I mean, right now, I think it's more so in sports and athletics that we're seeing that shift come to the forefront. But that's only because those select few who run the show in Hollywood are doing everything that they can to keep it the way it is in a public perception.
So in terms of films, where did you see that turning point? What was maybe a film that came out or a series of films where you started to see this shift?
Man, I mean, it actually goes. I mean, it goes back to the start of film. If you really want to get technical, like if we want to have like another series of conversations, because I mean, Georges Méliès, the first film that was ever made, he was a magician, so it started on our side. If you know what I mean, like if you want to be more of a dualistic approach about it, but more modern that people can relate to and can digest better. Like for me, it was like the Truman Show with Jim Carrey, because it was just so deep. I mean, his name is True Man. You know what I mean? And most people don't even see that much. Wow. So that's when, like, as a kid, and I was probably like 12 years old when that came out, but I was blown away because I put myself into like that world that they built around him, and just like all the metaphors and everything. More recently, I think Christopher Nolan is doing a good job as a visionary. Like, definitely Inception, because that was something that you could tell the man is a lucid dreamer, because he knows what that is like and how to encapsulate that, in a visual format and tell the story and stay true to it. But also, what's the Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey is another one that's like, I knew how that was gonna end, and I was watching on the edge of my seat, and when it came back around, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but like in the end with the Tesseract, I was like, wow, to be able to tell that story the way that he just told it, it had to be more than serendipitous, Now,
I mean, with the release of this book, do you find yourself maybe leaning more towards producing films that may be more consistent with themes that you've published in the book, or to continue to do the various different type of films that you've done?
It's a tough question, because on a human level, and that's the other thing, is that just having a conversation with you, we can talk about shit all day long, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I could take it up to, fa sol la ti do, like all the way up to do, let's just talk about this, right?
Yeah.
And on this level right here, I would love to make westerns, I would love to make kung fu, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just love that, but because I'm making that movie, it's always going to be a reflection of the conglomerate, everybody that's working together on it. But if I write it and direct it and edit it and everything, there's going to be messages in it. I won't even see some of those messages until I watch it the 10th time. And then I'll be like, wow, I didn't even realize I did that. So I want to keep my stuff lighthearted for the most part, but then that might change. You know what I mean? Like, as I change as an artist and as a person, I might want to make a real serious film. You know, I mean, like everybody always tells me, you got to do a documentary about Niagara Falls. And like the reason I haven't is because I feel like I'm living it. And if I start filming what I'm living every single day, I'm gonna go out of my mind. You know what I mean? I won't even know what to put in and what to leave out. Same thing like with my book, you know? Yeah. So I would rather, and this is what I'm working on right now, I would rather get to a point where I can produce up and coming filmmakers. Because even though I'm still young, I've been at it for long enough that I'm not up and coming anymore. You know, I've established myself. So, like, I produced a movie called I Dare You to Open Your Eyes, which the girl who wrote and directed and edited it was 16 at the time from Niagara Falls. So, it was a fantastic film. It just hit North Park Theater at its premiere, and it was way beyond, like, where I was at when I was 16. Like the way she edited it was like Quentin Tarantino.
Wow.
I find more pleasure in seeing somebody else's kung fu as it develops. Yeah. Because I know my kung fu, you know what I mean? So I just want to be able to put energy into watching younger generations, especially her being a female director, because there's not a lot of them in the world, you know? Yeah. And so I'm kind of, even though I direct and I write and, you know, do the whole thing, right now I'm leaning towards producing, just so that I can help others realize their potential.
Man, that says a lot, man, about you and your character, because you have a lot of people who have that kind of life experience, and they're not willing to help the next generation and actually enjoy seeing them be successful in their undertakings. I mean, what would you call that? How would you describe what that feeling is? You know?
Like my own, or what you just described?
Yours. You know what I mean? I know what that is.
Yeah, because that's how we got the 9 to 5, you know, 8 to 10. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like the world that we live in is because of that mindset. Yeah. It's altruism. That's all. You know, altruism is my personal philosophy. Yeah. Because I know that we are all a big family. You know, so.
I mean, is that something that is just innate, or can a person learn to be that way?
Absolutely, anybody can learn altruism. I mean, for some people, it takes a smack on the side of the head, you know, from reality, whether they lose a loved one, or, you know what I mean, like they get sick, or they just lose their job that they've had for a really long time. And, you know, I mean, like, you got the haves, you got the have-nots, and there's an old saying that a man who is well fed cannot understand a man who's hungry. You know, and it's true. So to make yourself always understanding, to keep yourself hungry, to stay hungry, that's how you understand people who are struggling and people who need help, and you know, maybe people who are not as fortunate as you are. And like, I always look at it as, we have to have something to measure ourselves against. For Christians, that would be Christ. For Buddhists, that would be the Buddha. You know what I mean? So if you're measuring yourself against a 6-inch measuring stick, like, you're not going to grow beyond that. You know what I mean? And not only that, but you're going to go by intervals that are smaller and slower. Yeah. You know? Yeah. It's like in the movie Ray, with Jamie Foxx, you know, where Paul Giamatti's like, well, you're thinking pennies, I want you to think dollars. You know, and that's it. How many people do you know that say, like, oh, well, one day I might do it? You know, it's like, today's the day. If you are serious about it, you know, like, if you wanna be a world-class guitar player, then you better own a guitar.
Yeah.
You know, and if you talk about doing it and you don't have a guitar, then I don't know why you're sitting here talking to me when you could go out and get a guitar. You know, it's as simple as that. Like the Buddha said, the problem is you think you have time.
Man, it makes me think about how somebody mentioned to me recently, and they were saying that I only like being around children. you know, being a preschool teacher and working in after school programs with, you know, pre-adolescents and stuff. They're saying you around children all the dang time, and I don't think you like being around adults or whatever. And I had to sit there and think about it. And when I put some thought into it, I realized that I have more patience and I'm less tolerant, you know, with adults, I would say, you know, because of that very idea of people thinking that they have all of this time in the world, you know?
Yeah. I totally understand, you know, and on one hand, it's like, well, you could work on that and try and have more tolerance. Like, that's why I actually enjoy intolerant people. I say that right in my book, you know, because they make me more tolerant. They make it so that I see the intolerance. Like, if somebody's like, I need it now, Ken, I need it now, I need it now. You're not going to get it, you know. I'm going to sit there, you know what I mean? I'm going to sit there as long as it takes until you understand that you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
But if somebody comes to me patient and they're like, do your best, take your time. I know you're an artist, you know, I want to be the best. Then I'll make sure they get it, you know, as fast as I can possibly do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's a constant, I mean, it's yin and yang, it's a constant give and take. And it's all energy, right? So the idea is you have this physical representation that, you know, all the elements have come together to create a physical representation of your spirit, okay? And what you're observing is naturally is always going to be you. You know, we're a mirror for each other. So in order for you to be the best you that you can possibly be in this representation, you should be able to take in and store energy more than you're giving it out. Okay? If you're constantly giving out energy, but it's like not getting enough sleep, not, you know, getting enough on your diet, you know what I mean? You're gonna get sick. Yeah. You know? So the idea is to be still. In stillness, you're moving a lot less. Your mind is not, you know, so muddy. It's like muddy water. If you have muddy water, it has to settle back down to the earth underneath the water. You can't go in and try and catch all the mud that's swirling around. You go in and you try to mess with it, you're going to muddy it up some more. So you need to let it be still. And that's when you get a clear reflection. That's everything. I mean, if you understand that one teaching, that's everything.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what are some of the challenges that people have to just understanding that one teaching?
Because they're thinking, what did he say? What did he mean by that? Do I have to do the breathing thing that he said before? You know what I mean?
There got to be more to it.
There's got to be more to it. It can't be that simple.
He ain't charging nobody $500 to tell him that.
Exactly. You know, there's not a drug that you could take. You know what I mean? That drug is called death. You know, so, I mean, there's a lot of challenges if you're talking about, like, who are we talking about? Because you could be talking about 5%, or you could be talking about 85%. Their challenge is they're blind, deaf, and dumb. That's always going to be the challenge, you know? So for 5%ers, the challenge is more so to cast off any kind of bitterness or, you know, spitefulness that you have towards people who are blind, deaf, and dumb, your environment, you know, the cards that you were dealt, you know what I mean? Like, always putting it on somebody else, like, man, I got a bad shake. You know? But it's like, you set that up. If you're not your own creator, like, if you're coming to me asking me for enlightenment, then you don't have it, you don't understand it, so I can't give it to you. You're seeking outside yourself. You know what I'm saying?
At the same time, it's like, some people run the risk of being on the opposite side of the spectrum. So if you're the have-not, you know, and that's the only world that you know, and that's what you're used to, when you start learning this knowledge of who you are, and you're growing and you're developing, some people run the risk of being on that opposite side of the spectrum now. When you're walking around egotistical, you know, you think that you got it all. You know what I mean? You on this pedestal and you looking down at other people as if they're less than you, you know, and then you're basically becoming the image and the likeness of the 10% now, you know?
I mean, what more can I add to that, you know? I mean, you're talking about somebody who's hood rich, right? And so they're all about what's out here, you know, how they appear to other people, and you know, they're worried about how they look to the so-called higher ups. You know what I'm saying? They want to impress people that they think can help them accelerate their career and their financial status and fame and all that stuff. It's like I always tell actors, like, hey, you're a good actor, focus on your craft. You know, if you want to be an actor to be famous, then, you know, you're focused on being famous. And that's a problem, because fame is something that comes as a side effect, you know? It's an effect of being a good actor. You know what I'm saying? Because there's no other way that people are going to watch you and more people see you, and that's fame. You know? So stardom and all that, like, that's all, it's all fake, you know? I mean, it is, you know, it's all fake. And so, like, if you're lusting after that stuff, you're wanting and you're pushing it away.
You're a savage in the pursuit of happiness, you know?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, it's the same thing.
And you know, it just made me think about it. It's like with people who want to be a published author, you know, they want to sometimes win awards and sell a whole bunch of books or be on Oprah's book list or whatever. But it's like, you know, this is your first book and it's being archived under a unique curation project at the British Library, which is a national library in the UK.
Yeah, I'm still letting it sink in, man.
Yeah, but you know, you got these celebrities, and you know they write these books, and you know it's like, man, but it's, you know, it kind of puts things in perspective. You know what I mean, in regards to what the purpose for real of what a writer is. You know, as opposed to somebody that's just out here just trying to sell books.
I mean, it's night and day, man. I mean, it's like that in any art form. I think that writing is... I honestly feel that writing is the most important of the mediums that I've, like, dabbled in. Because, first of all, like I said, you know, any film has a script, right? So it starts at the map, you know, but the map doesn't define the territory, right? So it's the same thing. The teachings are in here. That's not all the teachings, and it's not the only way to discuss the teachings, but they're in there, and it might not be something that everybody can pick up and use to craft their own reality, but even if somebody that's, you know, part of the 85% reads this book, it will still start fine-tuning them because of the words that they don't understand, the etymology of the words that they use in everyday life. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're using words that they think means one thing and it means a whole nother thing. And so when people actually know what those words mean and what language it comes from, they hear what they're actually saying. You get what I'm saying?
No, what's an example of a word?
So, like the word naughty. You know, people think that naughty can mean a lot of things. It could be a sexual thing. You know, it could be you're being bad. But the word naughty actually means to be without. So like not to have. And it was used in the sense that it's bad when people started using it as without God. So anybody who wasn't a part of the church was naughty. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's such a deep-seated way of thinking that, you know, nowadays, you got the naughty or nice list. You know what I mean? Like, kids, like, you're raising your kids, you know, Santa Claus is gonna bring you coal because you're naughty. You know, like, you're a soulless... You know? It's crazy, man. And what do? You get coal, you know?
That's something else, man.
It is. I mean, like, you know, our language is created to serve 10%. Okay? But they had to craft the language on older languages. And those older languages, they couldn't actually change the power. And so the written word, as you know, people who were enslaved were not allowed to know how to read and write. Well, why do you think that is?
Exactly. Like one of our lessons say, why does the devil teach and keep our people illiterate? And the answer says, so he could use it for a tool and also as a slave. He keeps them blind to himself so he can master them. Illiterate means ignorant. You know?
Absolutely. So, not knowing. Ignorant means not knowing. So, you know, if we can learn to read and write, I mean, did you ever see the movie Stargate with Kurt Russell? Who made that movie? You know what I'm saying? Like everything about that movie said secret teachings all over it, you know? And big Hollywood film, but, you know, it's still the same thing. When people learn to, like, what it is you put thoughts down, right? This is a form of telepathy. I put my thoughts on the paper and then you see it and you just read my thoughts. Okay, so we just connected without talking. And so if we can all get on the same page, then there's power in that. You know what I'm saying? So that's why traditionally people who are a part of the counterculture, the counter narratives, whatever those may be, have to write in a language that requires a cipher. You know what I mean? So like supreme alphabet, supreme mathematics. If you know the supreme alphabet and supreme mathematics and you read my book, it's gonna be entirely different than most people. I mean, I'm curious. You're the only one right now that I know that has done that. So if you could tell me, you know, how that came about for you, I would like that feedback.
In regards to like my perspective of it from that perspective. That's the way that we build with each other because we have that understanding, you know? So even when I was building with you before about how Sufism is, just the secret teachings in terms of communicating in a cipher or just a language that a lot of people don't realize that language had to be coded because it was anti the orthodoxy. You know, you have the average everyday people that are oftentimes sheeple being led to believe what the 10% want them to believe, and they're not really getting access to some of the esoteric perspectives of what's hidden beneath the layers of what oftentimes the church or the orthodoxy didn't even allow them to read.
Totally, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you have these segments of the population that begin to crack that code, they also begin to understand that we have to communicate with one another in such a way where we're not revealing certain things to the general public simply because you'd be persecuted. You know, you would be beheaded. You know, you had instances like that around the world.
And you asked me why, you know, like, why it took me so long. You know? But like, let's say, let's pick a chapter, okay?
Okay.
So chapter 2. Chapter 2 is eternity. Okay, that's the topic of discussion. And in supreme mathematics, 2 is wisdom. Okay, so automatically, if you're part of the nation of gods of earth, right? When you open up to chapter 2 and you see eternity, you're thinking, how is that the same as wisdom?
Exactly.
And right away, you're taken into a whole other level.
Exactly. You know, especially when you're actually learning what you actually wrote in that particular chapter.
Yeah.
You know?
I always thought I spoke backwards. Even just as a kid and growing up and everything. Because when I talk to people, like, a lot of times, before I was able to, like, more so be conscious about how I'm talking and my tone and the words I'm using, I would lose people's attention. Even teachers and you know, so-called authorities on you know, specific subjects. And I always thought, well, I must be long-winded, and so, you know, in being somebody that likes to, you know, just play with rhetoric, I thought that it had something to do with me. You know what I'm saying? I don't know where I was able to pick up speech patterns and understanding. I mean, I wish I could look back and study verbatim conversations that I had with my grandparents. You know what I mean? Because they're Sicilian, and the secret teachings were all over ancient Sicily. You know, so it could be. I mean, there's definitely like gypsy blood on that side of my family. You know what I mean? Who knows? But the amazing thing to me is that like your lineage and my lineage would be considered two entirely different races and cultures, but yet the language is the same.
Absolutely. And that's one of the beautiful things I love about the book, that it shows mathematics is the universal language. You know, and you don't have many people who are actually able to understand that language. You know, if you have people that understand that language, they're usually artists, because like I said, they're already thinking creatively and critically just about the world around them. You know, which puts them in a position where they're able to see some of the unity in terms of various different systems that they are engaged in. You know, and in terms of the 5%, that's one of the things that we teach, that civilization is for all the human families of the planet Earth. Because when a person is really committed to doing that study of what knowledge itself is, you leave no stone unturned. Right. You know, you study all different societies. You know, and one of our perspectives is being Allah, your Lord of all worlds. So you should be able to come in contact with various different people who is a lord of their world, who is a master at whatever that particular subject area is, or that particular career path, and that would be the best knower when it comes to that. So if I wanted to contact somebody that is into herbology, there's somebody that I can talk to, and they're a master of that world. You know, somebody else, they may be a master of etymology, where I could just ask them about certain type of words, and they will show you the origin of where all of that comes from.
But you could be a master of nothing, and in so doing, you're mastering everything. So, you know, you might not be able to break down the pieces of a plant and say, you know, what each piece is called in the scientific term, and but you can still explain everything about that plant. You know, one thing that was funny was the other day, somebody who bought my book came up to me and they were like, I read the first couple of chapters, and I gotta say, were you channeling the spirit when you wrote the introduction?
Channeling what spirit?
As in, like, God, right? And I said, well, I didn't write the introduction.
Well, not in this form, I think.
Well, but you wrote it. You wrote the introduction. You know, so she was like, oh, okay, there was somebody else that's your brother. And I was like, yeah, but... you know, and it was just so funny because the trick to all art is to deceive people. And you're deceiving people. The greatest artists are deceiving people in a sense that they don't know they're looking at art. You know what I mean? Like a painting will be able to capture light with paint. And you look at it and be like, oh wow, it looks like a bright sunny day, you know, like there's a light source, but it's just paint, you know what I mean? And like there's no faces in the portrait. You know, you're looking at a whole bunch of blobs of paint that somebody arranged in a pattern that you recognize as looking just like the image of the subject matter, you know? And that's being a master. That's being able to master that art to tricking people, you know, like, oh, it's a photograph. You know, people take that so lightly because it's so far beyond them, because if somebody's really good at what they do, they think, oh, it must be easy.
And you know, they make it look easy.
They make it look easy. You know, maybe they've been doing it for 50 years. But they're like, oh man, why should I pay this guy $100 to, you know, do a sketch? You know?
You know what? I think about that too. Like sometimes with a lot of the things that I do, people may think that it may just be easy for me to do certain things, not realizing all of the time and energy and effort that I've put into learning things in order to get to the point where I've developed a system to be able to produce certain type of projects.
Well, no doubt. I mean, but who are people?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the thing is that most people think that everybody around them has their own separate thoughts and it's all inherent and
it's their thoughts.
That's what they think. So they don't realize the oneness and all that.
Yeah.
And not being able to perceive what I call the mirror, not being able to see it, you know, with a big S.
Mm-hmm.
They think, oh, they're out to get me. It always leads back to that. It will always, even if they think everybody loves me, well, soon they might hate me. You know what I'm saying? I need to be the best. I need to be perfect. I can't have any wrinkles in my clothes because they're looking at me. You know? And so there's different plateaus that are inevitable on your way, you know, on the path, on your way home or whatever, you know, however you want to describe it. And some of those plateaus, like for example, when a master and a student are playing chess, and a master has already figured out all the moves on the board, and they got checkmate. If you're just playing a normal game of chess, they could just, you know, tell you to lay down your king. It's over. You know what I mean? But if you're the student to that master, they'll play it out to show you all the moves and everything. To the point where, you know, you should be able to sit down once you become a master and not even have to touch the board. You're just looking at it, but nobody's made a move yet. It's all based on that first move. That first move sets out all the possibilities, you know? And then you're reading the person across from you, and maybe you've played with them before, and so they're predictable, you know? So there is no opponent. Our opponent is everything that we are, you know? And so if we're creating our opponent, that's also creating us, just like, you know, Spider-Man has Venom and Superman has Lex Luthor. You know, there has to be that villain that is the same as a lot of times in those stories they were friends or partners, or, you know what I mean? Because if I'm saying, like, if you're a racist, bigot, redneck, then I'm saying I'm not a racist, bigot, redneck. So I'm actually defining myself based on you. Okay? But right there is the ego trap. You know? So what's the measuring stick there? A racist, bigot, redneck. So my measuring stick is real small, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm basing you as my supervillain, it's like in that movie Unbreakable with Bruce Willis, you know, the new one's coming out, Glass. Well, Mr. Glass, Samuel L. Jackson's character, is a supervillain in the sense that he's a super genius. Well, he found and made his villain, you know, his nemesis, somebody who's unbreakable. And he did that because he wanted his rival to be the best, so that he could be the best. So he's not looking at himself as a supervillain. He's looking at himself as somebody who doesn't want to stop knowing. You know what I mean? And so he has created an opponent in somebody else and said, look, we were created for this. You know, this is our purpose. And he can only run that game if he successfully convinces Bruce Willis's character that he's his villain. So he'll go to the end of the earth to do that. That's his purpose, you know?
Yeah, it reminds me of one of our lessons. We talk about how God made devil. And in the answer, we say to show forth and prove our power that we're all wise and righteous. We can make this devil and basically give him the power to rule the earth, and then without falling victim to that devil civilization, which ultimately shows and proves who you've always been. You know what I mean?
And that's what it is. That's the ego, big ego. That's the ego game. A lot of people don't dig into Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, You know, I studied psychology for years just because I want to know how the mind works. And what I learned was that the ego is a false self, it's like a straw man. You know, so anything that you put into it, your interests, your thoughts, your feelings, you're constantly programming yourself. You know, like you'll see like a big fat lady. You know, a lot of women will do this and be like, "Oh, she's gross." Well, what they're saying about themselves is, "I don't want to be fat. I don't want to ever look like that." You know, so they're creating a mental illness in themselves. You know, and that's an ego. It's self-image, but it's warped because the self, as we come to understand and we know it, is beyond that, it's transcendent. And so people have to learn about the ego to know who that opponent is. And the ego created the devil. So that the ego had somebody to blame. So the way that I see it, based on the prophecies that I put in the book, like with the 4 races, is that this being the 4th age and the white man's time to rule. Okay, and it started with the black race, and then the red race, and then the yellow race. And we know that there was a great flood. We know that, you know, there were other ages. This age will come to an end with the resolution being the black race, the red race, and the yellow race all have to forgive the white man. And the white man's task is to admit that he was wrong.
Hey, that's a challenge.
That's the challenge, right?
Because when you're saying you're wrong, that means you have to call into question institutions. You gotta call into question the way that resources have been distributed. You know,
if you say you're
economies.
I know, man, and this is why all my white friends get on me. You know, they want to own me. They want to. You're white, Ken. You're white. You know, like they don't understand I'm half Sicilian. You know what I mean? So they look at skin color, but it's not actually about skin color. You know. So and there's nothing wrong with being white in terms of your genealogy. You know what I mean? And your culture.
But like your nationality and
it's nothing. You know, it's the mentality that you know the white needs to be on top. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing that I really want to break through with this book and these teachings, because I think that the other 3 races can forgive. I think we've already got past that. I think we're at the point where the white man has to admit that he was wrong. And everything in our American society today is pushing that. You know what I'm saying? It's pushing that button. Like Liz and I were watching Rest in Power, the Trayvon Martin documentary. And it's like, yo, come on, man. Like, you murder a kid, and everybody wants to act like that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, I just seen today that there was a white cop who was off the clock, and she walked into someone else's apartment thinking it was hers. Okay, and it was a black guy, and she seen him in there, and she thought, oh, he must be burglarizing me, and so she shot and killed him, but it was his apartment. How are they going to spin that to be like, well, he was threatening? You know what I mean? She's got to admit that she was wrong. There's no other way. There's no other way that they could say that was justified. That's not justice. That's not how justice... We don't get to define justice. We don't judge it. You know what I mean?
It's something else, man. And I think that's one of the reasons why I focus primarily on the youth, because they haven't been indoctrinated like that yet. You know, where they're still open, and if one of their friends in preschool hurts them or does something, they're quick to forgive. And they're playing with each other the next 5 minutes. You know?
So why do you think that is? Do you think that they haven't kind of got like the toxicity that adults have, where they've realized that they can hold that over somebody else's head?
Some of them are a little bit more sophisticated like that, where they're learning that and they're being socialized in environments by adults that are teaching them that. But because they're in that age group where they're before 6 years old, their brain is still developing. So you still have an opportunity to be a brain architect at this moment, where your impressions become indelible marks.
Yeah.
Literally on their brain at this time.
Yeah, and you're not impressing debt upon them.
Absolutely.
You know?
And they're closer to universal consciousness.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know? So it's like, to me, it's like, man, one of my resolves are to strive to reach them as young and as early as possible, and to encourage and impress upon them some of the right ways of seeing things, so that that'll stick. And as they get older, they have the ability to think more creatively and critically about this world, and won't become some of these adults that we see.
Right, yeah. You know, I mean, like, one basic teaching to me, and it's something that, you know, it always goes back to this medicine wheel, because it's like the white man just has to admit that he was wrong, you know? But black people, right, must be original, because your skin color matches the earth. Okay, so your body came from the earth, and it's closer to the natural shade of the earth than mine is. Okay, so like, I burn in the sun. You know what I mean? And that shows that, like, I'm still transitioning to something, because I don't have built-in chemicals in my skin that help me. You know, even though I'm from this plane and this earth. So I look at it as like, it's so simple. There's basic concepts that in the end, it's not gonna matter. It's not, you know, it's not the end all be all. But if people are gonna say like a Christianity kind of paradigm that they're stuck in, okay, well, you got a million different sects of Christianity, you know. But if they accept the Old Testament and Adam comes from the earth, what do you think Adam looked like? You know what I mean? Like, what happened? We got white Jesus, you know, we got hippie Jesus, and if you do your research and you watch the imagery of the Messiah for these people, right? So it's changing throughout history, and then you watch the social narrative changing throughout history, and you see, you know, how the artists were commissioned to create these classic images, and what their goal was as the church who were commissioning, you know what I mean? Like, they created like a false persona. They created a mascot. Okay, so, but like in my book, I made a drawing in there that looks more like an Asiatic black man, which I've never seen that image. I've seen images of a black Jesus, you know what I mean? But to me, he's, without a doubt, Yeshua was a Buddhist. I mean, all of his teachings are Buddhist, and there's like insurmountable evidence that he was in India for a long time. And what will happen is, white people who are like, you know, so diehard snowflake white that, you know, they can't let go of it, will see that image and they'll say, okay, yeah, we get it. You know what I mean? Like, they'll immediately...
Why you throwing it in my face?
Okay, we get it. There's no way that... You know what I mean? Because there's no way that Yeshua was like a white person as we define it today, you know, in terms of their looks. So if they have that reaction, then my next question for them is, well, why is it so important to you that we don't talk about this? Why is it so important to you that we maintain white Jesus if it's not a big deal? You get what I'm saying? If it's not such a big deal, then let's tell the truth.
If it doesn't matter, why does it matter?
Exactly. You know, and that happens all the time, right? Like somebody will say something that they know is gonna like hurt you or is dishonest, and then when you check them, they'll be like, "Oh, it doesn't matter though." You know, like you know, and it's like, well, no, let's not just like those kids might forgive. You know what I'm saying? Those kids that you talk about, they might just be like, "Oh, okay," because they don't realize that person was being dishonest with them yet. You know, and so we're like our generation is so important because like we've crossed the threshold of technology. You can talk to your friend in China instantly. You know what I mean? And so we have such a responsibility in that the way we act is being imitated and picked up by children. And so if somebody's being dishonest with us and then they see us just like, oh, it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, do you want that kid to be able to grow and understand? You know, like if somebody says to me, because constantly, like one thing that I get about my public persona, it's always from people that don't really know me, you know, is, oh, why are you so militant and controversial? But you know me. I mean, I'm actually like one of the most peaceful people I know, and
You're
like
sitting down having a peaceful conversation right now.
Man, I'm a pacifist. Like flies get in the house, I can't kill it. You know, based on my philosophy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, it's so funny for me to have people, and they'll say, well, you know, you're so controversial. It's like, I guess if talking about the truth is controversial, then yeah, by your standards, I'm controversial. But if the truth is doing harm to somebody, then that person's dishonest. You know, like there's a saying that when the honest man discovers he's wrong, he either ceases to be wrong or he ceases to be honest. You know, so I strive to always be honest. And in you know, most major religions, they have some saying about like the truth will set you free. Well, for those who are actually able to understand these words, you speak, you create. And you want to create the path that has the least amount of resistance for your calling. And that path is truth. Oh, with a tangled web we weave, if at first we do deceive. Because you're lying to yourself. People who are walking around all day going, nah, I'm not like that. Nah. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, no, I don't need more money. No. You know, like, oh, I don't need to look at other women. You know what I mean? No. Like, what the fuck are you doing to yourself? You're in your own head. You know, that's a terrible way to live. You know, like you are creating a paradox. The same thing as that cognitive dissonance, except you're losing. You know what I mean? You're losing that battle because you're looking at that from a very weak standpoint. It's always how you're perceiving. If you're standing on top of a mountain and you're looking at everything, you know, everything's laid out like a map. You know what I mean? So that the bottom of that mountain, the foundation, that's number one, right? And that's where you start. And you know, you might be someone like me that wants to climb up the steep side. And you know, for most other people, they want to take the path that has already been carved out. No problem with that. I mean, these teachings that I know of, just from, you know, the research that I've done, have transformed throughout centuries to the point where Farah Muhammad, right? Okay, you had told me some fascinating information about Farah Muhammad that I had no idea. He sounds the exact same as Gurdjieff. And like, I know that you know who Gurdjieff is, but you haven't read any Gurdjieff, right?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Just a little bit, but not enough to like, you know, fully. I'm only halfway through one of the books on Gurdjieff because it's so complex and it's so in depth, you know. But then it's like everything that he talks about is the scales. Everything that he talks about is mathematics, and it's all supreme understanding. And he talks about the chakras, you know, the spheres, and how they play into the seven, and what that means. You know what I mean? Like, and how to control it, and how to calibrate. And I'm looking at that, and I'm like, okay, so like he's saying that number one is knowledge, and number two is wisdom, and number three is understanding. But how can that be when it's the same thing in your culture, unless they both came from the same source? And Gurdjieff studied with the hidden masters in the Far East. Okay, so I know I would say I'm an outsider, right, from the Nation of Gods and Earth. I have not gone through the initiation and knowledge of 120, and you know what I mean? I'm still a 5%er, but I'm not a part of the nation. But I know that the teachings are precise and factual because I study from where they come from. You know, so that's awesome to me to see that somebody that in a whole other lineage, the tribe of Shabazz, was able to branch out and reach urban cities and areas and create a whole nother population of people who know the secret teachings but don't even know that they're the secret teachings. What's the purpose?
Some don't, you know, and some of that is because when you have enlighteners or educators, your lineage really sets the standard, it sets that tone.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So thankfully I've had the type of enlightener who studied all of these different sciences of life, you know. Then his enlightener was the same way, and it goes back in terms of our particular family tree. But that you may come in contact with other 5%ers and they may not have that type of lineage. You know, they may be orientated a different type of way. You know?
I mean, obviously, you know, being unique and being original is everything, you know. So if it weren't that way, then there would be an issue, right? But I still feel that if you're seeking knowledge or higher knowledge, or, you know, however you want to cut it, that you've got to know those things. I mean, like, that's historical fact, you know, like in the secret teachings, if something is not able to be proven scientifically, if science actually debunks something, then it gets discarded. It can't be used anymore. And the reason that that's important is it's a false teaching. If you know, somebody brings to you science that is exact, and they say, well, you know, this is an anomaly, or, you know, like your numbers were off, or, and you get proven wrong, and you continue with that, it's a false teaching. You know what I'm saying? So I know that you have shown proof, and I have in Buddhism just what I just said, that if science doesn't apply to it, it's a false teaching. It's the same thing.
Exactly. And one of the things we say is we stand to be corrected. You know?
Absolutely, yeah.
So
you can learn.
Exactly. So if it's something that I've been studying and learning or whatever, and we build with each other, that's no different than presenting that study to our own scientific community.
Absolutely.
You know?
Okay, good night. Love you too.
Thanks. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's presenting your research to the scientific community, and people have an opportunity to add on to it or take away from it. So that's build or destroy. You know, if a person adds on to it, you take it back to the lab, and then you add on to it. If it's something you've never experienced before, you've never actually strived to use, you put it into practice to see how it applies. You know, but you're always making those type of adjustments. You're open to learning and to stand to be corrected, because you may present something and somebody is like, well, I think you need to take that away. You got to be open to that. You know what I'm saying? Because that may make whatever it is that you've been studying that much more sound. And when you do that, it's like most people, when they're artists and they're using pencils, they oftentimes don't like using an eraser. You're supposed to be open to using both sides of that pencil.
So you need to be susceptible to constructive criticism. I mean, that you just described to me not only the art of the teachings, but also in a way is kung fu. You're talking about being fluid. And I mean, like I've cross-referenced everything in my book, and some of this stuff's taken from ancient samurai teachings. Like when you're in a samurai battle with somebody, you keep your eyes locked. You know what I mean? And it should come to the point, if you are a better swordsman, that as our eyes are locked, if I look over there real quick, your attention is going to go over there. You get what I'm saying? And so when you're looking at something from a different perspective, example would be as a painter. You're up close and you're painting it, and you can't really see what like a third party can see. It's valuable to be able to have that third party perspective that's unbiased and can see from a different plane. You get what I'm saying? Because you might have made the proportions different. You might have, slanted to the right, like whatever it may be that you can't see, because maybe you got one leg that's shorter than the other. So everything you do slants. You know what I mean? And you can't tell because you're slanted. So you need somebody who's got two legs that are equal, and that allows you to balance. It's the focal point. It's the still point. It's the fulcrum. That's how anything works. The fact that it works is what we should be talking about. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's function. How does it function? How does it work?
Like if I got a pencil and I put another pencil on top, there's going to be a certain point where that pencil will balance perfectly. Why is it that certain point? People could say, well, it's got to do with the weight distribution, the size, and all of the physical qualities. But what is that point of balance? What is that vantage point in the painting? You know what I mean? What is that point in your mind where you can have a balanced life? What is a balanced nutrition in that your body is accepting it and not rejecting it? You know what I mean? Everything we do has to be with balance. One of my chapters is on balance. Can you guess which one?
6th chapter.
I think so. I gotta check, make sure. Yep. So
Equality.
Exactly. So equality is balance, right? So I want 5%ers to read this book and look at chapter 6 and say, why is chapter 6 balance? And they might just skim over that and be like, well, it's equality. I know that.
Yeah.
Well, you're not balanced then, because you're saying that you know everything. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to take you back. Every word that's in here, I'm trying to take you back to that still point. So that you're not getting away from yourself and you're actually hearing what's being talked about.
Sure did. Yeah. So, man, I want to thank you for taking the time to sit down.
Yeah, no doubt.
Before we leave, where can people find the book at?
It's on Amazon right now.
Okay.
So they can type in Secret Teachings of the Hidden Masters. They can find me on Facebook, Ken Cosentino, Cosentino. I also have a website, which is theniagarian.com, Niagarian. And that's it right now. I mean, I have copies available so people locally, if they want to save on the shipping or they want to get it autographed, they can come directly to me, and I'm happy to do that.
Okay. Do you have an email that people can reach you at as well?
My email address is white, WHITE, lion, LION, Inc., INC, @gmail.com.
Okay.
I'm just interested in speaking to people who are interested in the teachings and sacred wisdom, and I'm also interested in learning more about your culture,
Mm-hmm.
which is really our culture, but I can't claim anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm interested in speaking with people from different walks of life
Mm-hmm.
and having them read the book and then get feedback